Tesla stock down almost 13% this week, as I'm sure everyone's already aware. Got absolutely annihilated after their earnings call. For the seasoned Tesla investors, this is just another day in the life. But is it? Is the fundamental thesis intact? Is the story changing? That's what I want to cover today. Look at the numbers and see where we're at with this company, because I got to be honest with you. I've been investing in Tesla since 2019, and the last earnings call, I wrote an article about this over at my Substack, link below, talking about how it was the first call that just wasn't very inspiring, wasn't like a crazy guidance. Elon on the call sounded kind of depressed, much more low energy than usual. And, I recognized that and kind of brushed it off. And now we just got the second call in a row that I'd say was disappointing, and clearly the market reacting accordingly with the stock down 13% here. What's going on here? Is this just a short-term blip on the radar, or is something fundamentally changing? Let's take a look at some of the key metrics from the earnings report. So definitely a mixed bag here. I mean, if we start with some bright spots, Model Y, best-selling vehicle of any kind globally. Okay, the fact that an electric vehicle was the best-selling vehicle globally, that is a great sign. They delivered over 1.2 million Model Ys alone. So that is making up, the majority of their sales. We'll get to the total numbers down below. But, it's also, it seems like it's kind of reaching its max capacity, max market demand, perhaps, between the Model 3 and the Y. It's not clear how much more they could really increase the sales, especially with 2023, just price cut after price cut. It seemed that they were really having to do these price cuts to juice the demand. So, the story has been changing a lot here, because we went from Tesla a couple years ago is supply constrained, demand is quasi infinite, to it seems like the demand maybe is not really there anymore, or they're just kind of maxing out on what the market can handle, how many sales of electric vehicles that are still, I guess, kind of on the higher end here price wise, what the demand is for that. So the Model Y was the best selling vehicle, which that's great to see. Obviously that's a great sign, but again, at the expense of not only decreasing margins, but revenue. I mean, really nothing crazy here. Revenue year over year grew 3%. I mean, it basically stayed flat. For a growth company with a 54 PE ratio, 3% growth is not very inspiring on total revenues. They brought in $25 billion of revenue, for a little over $4 billion gross profit. So their gross profit margins continue to tick down. Again, year over year, it was at 23.8% a year ago. We're down to 17.6%. And all of the margins just continue to decrease. I mean, operating margin was up slightly, but free cash flow was up, $2 billion in free cash flow. They also spent $2.3 billion on CapEx. So they're kind of threading the needle here of just balancing growth and R&D to the extent that it makes sense. So another bright spot, they stayed free cash flow positive, and they've got a great balance sheet, up to $29 billion of cash on the balance sheet, very low debt. So I'd say another bright spot, they really didn't talk much about the Cybertruck on the call, but they did have the delivery event in November. I think it went well, and haven't really seen anything bad about the Cybertruck yet, other than it's going to be a slow ramp just because it's such a revolutionary new product and the way they're manufacturing it. So energy and services and other revenue kind of stagnated, pretty flat, quarter over quarter. Year over year, they were up a decent amount. Energy up 10%, services up 27%. But, it's such a small portion of the pie still. I mean, nothing major changing there. So we looked at the quarterly numbers, and then for the year here, 2023 total revenue $96 billion, up 19% year over year. So better than this quarter showed, but still not really high enough to probably justify the valuation of the company, but not terrible, all things considered. $4.3 billion of free cash flow this year. They spend a record amount on capital expenditures. So again, they're investing in all these future projects. Got the next generation vehicle, which we'll touch on in a second here. As you can see in the cost of goods sold per vehicle here, that continues to tick down, so that's a great sign. That's down to about 36,000, a little over $36,000 per vehicle, down from 37,500 last quarter, and they've continuously been driving down the cost of goods sold per vehicle. So that's definitely a positive. And then you've got the cumulative miles driven with FSD beta here, looking like a hockey stick. It just continues to increase. They've got all these cars out there collecting data with the people participating in full self-driving beta. But if we move to what seems a little bad, perhaps, is they mentioned the Dojo supercomputer. This was Tesla's supercomputer that has been pretty hyped up. Morgan Stanley came out with a report earlier in the year, in 2023, saying that that alone could add something like $500 billion to Tesla's market cap. And now we get to this earnings call, and they talk about Dojo as if it is basically a moonshot with a very slim chance of ever succeeding. And it seems like that's what a lot of these things are right now. I mean, you look at Tesla, okay, so it's got a $580 billion market cap. And what exactly is that based on? I mean, the auto business maybe is worth $100 billion. If we that's probably being generous. If we combine Ford at $45 billion and General Motors at $48 billion, let's just say we could give the auto business $100 billion of value. Again, they're selling how many cars a year here? 1.8 million or so. We delivered 1.8 million vehicles in 2023, so that grew 38% year over year. So again, while that's a great growth rate, and many other companies maybe are seeing their numbers contract over the last few years, it still is only 1.8 million vehicles. A Toyota is selling 10 times that amount almost, maybe 10 or 12 million, and Toyota has a market cap of 300 billion with 10 times as many sales nearly, maybe more like, let's see, how many Toyota sold in 2021, 10.5 million vehicles. So again, much more than Tesla. So they've got $300 billion market cap. Okay, so let's even, we'll be generous. Maybe we can value Tesla there. I mean, that would really be rich. That's still half what the valuation is today, and that's after this massive drop we've seen. So what is the value pegged on? Well, it's on this next generation vehicle, which we know Tesla's optimistic with timelines, and we're not getting it this year. They said maybe next year. So probably you can add another year on top of that. So that's kind of far out into the future. You've got full self-driving, which also just seems very up in the air right now of, are we ever actually going to get to full robo-taxis, and what is the timeline looking on that? Because they've said this year, every year for the last 10 years. So I just don't know how much you can kind of value that today again. And then the Optimus bot, of course. I mean, the bot and the robotaxi stuff is basically the keys to Tesla's valuation here. And again, they kind of seem like these far away, uncertain prospects right now. So I don't know. I think that the story is definitely changing here. Again, Tesla just went from being, okay, it was, supply constrained to we're going to be this high margin car business. Now it's looking like neither of those things. And it seems like they're going to have to rush to get this 25K car out to like really be able to continue growing. Again, it kind of seems like Model 3 and Y have reached maybe close to their peak demand. We already know Model S and X, they're not really needle movers. And the Cybertruck is good, but it's ramping slowly. So there wasn't really much mention of it, and I don't think it's going to have a really material impact this year. So how do you get to this massive Tesla valuation with a PE ratio of 54 when some of its big tech peers, even like Meta, they've got 35 PE ratio. So it just seems like Tesla is definitely overvalued in the short term here, barring something crazy, some crazy good news. They didn't really say anything about an event or anything coming. I guess another bright spot would be the supercharger network that hopefully can function as the gas stations kind of do, and everyone's getting. That was a big pump in 2023, was when all these other car companies were adopting the North American charging standard and basically capitulating and having to use Tesla Supercharger network. So maybe you'll see some revenue start to come in from there. But again, just nothing really crazy, nothing spectacular to really justify today's valuation. So I don't know. I definitely holding my shares, not doing anything right now. But I did sell some covered calls yesterday on Tesla around a 220 strike. Uh, but yeah, not really a great call. I don't know. It does seem like a lot has changed. And again, I just don't know how much I want to peg the valuation of what I'm paying and owning today on what may or may not happen 5 years from now, let's say. I'm definitely in this stock for the long term, but I liked it better when it was more so Tesla's this great high growth car company with the highest margins we've ever seen, defying all odds. And then it was like full self driving, the bot, all these things were kind of just free call options, but they weren't like fundamental to the thesis. I saw them as a bonus. Obviously, full self driving, Elon has said, is going to be the difference between Tesla being worth a lot or zero, basically. But, I always viewed these things, energy storage, everything else they were doing, as just bonuses to this really great company with high demand, high margins. And it does seem like all that's changed. So we'll have to see what happens. I think 2024 could also be kind of like a reset year here where we're in between growth phases and we just got to get to that next generation vehicle. But time will tell. I look forward to hearing your guys' opinions. What do you guys think of the call? What do you think of Tesla today? In the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.